Hello, boils and ghouls. Arif Blackstone here with another episode of Behind the Keyboard. Today, my guest is the one and only William Meikle, author of the Ed Squad series and The Land Below for Severed Press, along with The Dunfield Terror, Berserker, and his very own Sigils and Totems universe. Enjoy. Willie, thank you so much for being here and for joining us today.
It's good to be here. Nice to put a face to the people I know online as well.
Yeah, that it is strange when you have just interaction, then all of a sudden you go, "Oh, that's what the guy looks like."
Yeah.
Weird. Oh, yep. I know exactly how that is. So you've been at this for, I don't want to say a long time, but quite a
uh,
while.
30 years this year.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
started.
So
I'm 63 now. I started when I was 33. Yeah.
okay. So what made you decide to follow this crazy lunatic path?
Uh, when I was at school, I was writing mainly song lyrics as a guitar player at the time, learning guitar, writing a lot of songs and occasional bits of poetry and occasionally short stories every now and again. But I never had that much confidence in my short stories, and I put them away. And I didn't do anything. I got stuck in the rat race for a while. I ended up working in London in an IT company, high pressure job. I was there until my early 30s. And it wasn't until that job sort of disappeared and I moved back to Scotland that I started writing again. So I was, I said 33 by that time. And just one day I got an idea in my head that it wouldn't go away. I had to write it down, and that's all just flew from there.
wow. Okay. And I mean, I heard about you because the first thing of yours I read was Operation Antarctica. The
Yeah.
you know, that cover just really got my attention, and as I said, I am a fan, and I mean, you've written some with some of the great characters, of all time, like Karnaki, Sherlock Holmes. You've
Yeah.
done a lot in the Lovecraftian, with the Lovecraft mythos. How did how you get that sort of opportunity?
Well, the Karnaki stuff started about ooh, 12 years ago now. A publisher I was with at the time said, "Do you? I know you like Karnaki. Do you fancy writing a Karnaki story for me?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I will fancy writing one." So he said, "Well, why not write three then?" So I wrote three, and then that Regent's Press, who I was just getting involved with at the time, the editor of them said to me, "Well, now that you've written three, do you fancy writing a whole book of them?" I said, "Oh, all right then, I'll go and do that." And then somebody said, after the Kanaki book came out, somebody said, "You really could do Sherlock Holmes as well, couldn't you?" I went, I'll give that a go. So I wrote a Sherlock Holmes story for an anthology in the States, and it went down really well. Everybody loved the story. So that Regis Press to me said, "Well, you've done one of them. Why don't you do a book of them as well?" So I ended up writing a whole book of Sherlock Holmes shorts. And after that, the guy at that region said to me, "Well, you've done Karnaki and Holmes. Why don't you try Professor Challenger now?" I went, "Oh God." He said, "Oh, really?" I said, "All right, I'll try that." So I wrote a Challenger book as well. So I ended up writing Karnaki, Challenger, and Holmes books. And Challenger went away because he became a copyrighted character
Ah,
the Conan Doyle estate because they want to make Challenger movies. So you can't write any Challenger stories anymore. But I can still write Holmes and Karnaki. I've sort of quieted down quite a bit in them in recent years. I stopped doing all of it because I think I was oversaturating myself with them. I wrote 50 Karnaki stories now, got four
whoa.
Karnaki books out, and I've written uh, two Holmes novels, three novellas, and the book of short stories. I think that's enough Sherlock Holmes for me. So, that's nearly as much as Conan Doyle wrote.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna say.
Yeah, so I think I'm back to now that I'm into the squaddies and the operation books. I think they're taking over my focus in recent years, and I'll be sticking with them. As I say, I'm 63 now, and I'm getting too old to sort of move around too much. But just pick one thing and go for it from now on. I think.
No, that makes sense, and there are a lot of Sherlock Holmes, continuing stories or separate
Yeah,
stories and all that. I mean, I'll be honest, I had never heard of Karnaki until I saw one of your collections.
yeah,
Um, and I read it, went, okay, this is really cool. Then went and looked up and read about the character. I mean,
Yeah.
what is it about Karnaki that that kind of you were drawn to?
Uh, he's a bit Lovecraftian before Lovecraft. He's also a bit Victorian just after the Victorian era, so he sort of fits into the halfway between the Victorian stuff and the weird tales stuff. So and the British sensibility of him sitting around in a flat in London with all his mates having a drink and a smoke while telling stories. I always like that kind of thing as well. It fits in with a lot of the old Hammer horror movie
Yep.
scenarios as well. So that's the way I think of Karnaki. Is I'd love to have seen Peter Cushing playing him.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah, and always thought it would be great. They made one TV episode featuring Karnaki in a series called The Rivals of Sherlock Holmes back in about 73, 74 in Britain. And Donald Pleasance played him.
Oh, okay.
And it was okay, but he wasn't quite right. He's a bit too small and a bit too serious for the character. But I think Peter Cushing would have done it justice.
Yeah,
I'd love to have seen that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, Cushing would have definitely done it with that. Like a twinkle in his eye.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were given the chance, would you write Karnaki again, or would you go for would you write any of those other older, I don't want to say forgotten characters, but
Yeah, Karnaki I would do again. There's other people doing Karnaki now as well. Since I started, other people have come aboard. There was one collection done in the mid-80s for a company called Ash Tree Press, and that's how I really heard about them. It was somebody else writing Karnaki stories where I first found them. And then I went back and read the originals after that as well. So I did what you did, found somebody's Karnaki stories and went back and read the original. So I went backwards that way as well. I think I read them. I actually, looking back on them, I think I read them when I was about 14
oh,
originally. Then mostly forgot about them. They came out in British paperback editions back in the early 70s. And I was reading everything I could get my hands on back then, so I probably did read them back then, but I probably forgot about them a bit. It was about that time I discovered Lovecraft as well, similarly, 72, 73. I read everything I could in horror long before I started writing. I was a big horror reader from a long time back.
okay. So you basically had your, let's say training for writing in the genre before you even thought about writing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm an avid reader of everything. I was reading the Alistair MacLean thrillers and all the Ian Fleming Bond books, all the science fiction I could get my hands on. I've read all the way through everything up to about 1975. I stopped reading science fiction and moved more into horror. Just after King came along, it was King that turned me into a horror reader, basically, because I discovered Carrie and then Salem's Lot just as they first came out, so 40 odd years ago now.
Wow.
And that turned me to be a horror fan. Yeah, it is 40 odd years ago now as well. Yeah. I think the first real horror book I picked up and read was the Dennis Wheatley ones. You come across Dennis Wheatley?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
He was very big in Britain back in the late 60s, early 70s. And they made a couple of Hammer horror films out of his books. That's how I got into him. It was To the Devil a Daughter and The Devil Rides Out.
Okay, yeah, that's
They're
where the
both,
name's familiar because I've seen those two movies.
yeah, they're both Dennis Wheatley novels. So I got into horror first by reading him. And then the Pan books of horror, which were collections of short stories in Britain, very big selling. They were selling about 500,000 copies each in paperback.
Whoa.
Every one of them came out. And the series ran for about 30 books. I used to have a whole run of them. And they covered the whole history of horror fiction from 1860s all the way through to the 1960s. So they had loads and loads of horror stories. So I got a good grounding in the genre early on.
Yeah.
And of course, I've been following King and then Barker and Ramsey Campbell all the way through from 75 onwards for both of them.
Wow. So you're there at the beginning of the horror renaissance of the 80s and all
Yeah,
those.
that's right. Yeah, I was there. I was there to see The Exorcist in its first run in the cinema as well.
Oh, and okay, so everyone says The Exorcist is one of the scariest movies that ever came out, and when it first came out, it everyone like the reaction was just shock and
Yeah,
awe, and is that true, or has
Yes,
it?
it was. Yes, there was a lot of screaming in the cinema, and
Wow.
there's actually people leaving because they couldn't handle it as well.
Well,
There really hadn't been a film that scary before. I'd seen Rosemary's Baby before, but it was different. It was more moody,
yeah.
uh, but then The Exorcist was more grabbing you by the balls and making you scared, and it worked. It worked in the cinema back then because nobody had seen anything quite like it. It was
Yeah.
groundbreaking in its time.
Oh yeah, and I mean, even now, people still like people. I'm 34 years old, and people my age, people my age say, "Yeah, The Exorcist, that's scary." And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's because of just it's a 13-year-old girl going through all that, and the
yeah,
way everyone, just it feels real.
yeah. That's right. Yep. And the horror movies before that had been mainly about big beasties and creature features and stuff, which I love as well. But this is the first one is sort of grounded it in reality more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And what is it about horror that you like? What like you said that you read everything, but
Yeah,
you've just gravitated more towards horror. What is it
yeah. I
about
think
it?
it's science fiction is more about ideas, but horror is more about people and emotions. I think in general, although a lot of the new age science fiction later in the 70s started veering more into what I class as horror. Like Harlan Ellison to me
Mhm.
is just as much a horror writer as he was a science fiction writer.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, so, but horror I think always felt more about the people, whereas science fiction was all about the big ideas a bit more. That's what dragged me into horror. But I still go back and read a lot of science fiction still now, but not as much as I used to. I pick and choose more than I used to.
Of course. Oh, that makes perfect sense. My dad's similar age to you, and yeah, he's really picky for everything. So I understand.
Yeah,
And I mean, when you look at your bibliography, you've got, you do cover basically uh, almost every facet of the horror genre. I mean, you've got your, Lovecraftian, you've got your gothic horror,
yeah.
you've got your
And
creature feature with the
yeah,
S Squad.
yeah. Got standard old fashioned type ghost stories as well. Do quite a bit of them. The only thing I don't do is gore.
Yeah.
The gore and the splatter stuff. It just doesn't appeal to me. I think
Okay.
I just missed out
Okay.
on that.
And I mean, like, as I said, I got into you through the S Squad books. Where did that come from?
Well, that's a mixture of lots of different things. Early on, one of the first science fiction films I ever remember seeing back in, must have been about 66 when I was about 8, was Them, the one of the giant ants.
Ah, yep.
Yep. And that made a big impression on me even back then. So I would just say I was maybe 66, 67. I was only 8 or 9 years old. And I always go back to that film. So the creature features 55, 56 years back for me now. Uh, I also mentioned earlier about Alison McLean thrillers, things like Where Eagles Dare and The Guns of Navarone,
Mhm.
with squads of people going to do a job. That came to me when I was thinking about the S Squad. There's also a bit of aliens in there about the Space Marines going to beat the shit out of monsters, and there's a bit of dog soldiers in there as well,
Yeah,
which,
that's what I was gonna
especially
say.
the accents and the banter between the soldiers. So there's all of that mixed up together, and uh, my continuing love with Ray Harryhausen movies and all the monsters, which I've had all my life, all just mashes together. And because it's Scottish, it's in a voice that I just fall into naturally. So I can just start typing, and all the conversations come to me in my head. So just away we go. So all the banter is fairly rooted in my own background. I come from the west coast of Scotland, about 20 miles south of Glasgow.
Okay.
You can picture it on a map. And it was a steelworking town. Everybody in the town worked in the steelworks, just about all the men anyway. The women all worked in a mill, and the men all worked in the steelworks, and it was very much a working class Scottish background. So the banter that the squad have together in the books all comes from basically the people talking in my hometown.
Okay. Because like reading it, I've yet to read Operation Yukon. That's the only one I haven't read yet. But reading it all, yeah, the conversations just it does sound like something from Dog Soldiers or from like Guns of Navarone, just with that really thick Scottish.
Yeah, yep. It's the way I see it in my head. It runs very much like an action movie in my head when I'm writing them. I'd love to see them done as movies, but I doubt that'll ever happen.
Well, you never know. And I mean,
Mm.
did you ever, like, when you wrote the first one, Infestation? That was the first one, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever think it would kind of keep going?
No, the Infestation was just written as a one-off. I didn't think I'd do any more. Uh, it happened at the time. What's 4 years back now? I had a bit of a shock in the family here. My wife nearly died,
Oh,
and I woke up one morning and she collapsed at my feet and stopped breathing. And she was very ill for a while after that. And I couldn't get my head around writing at all for a while, for months and months. That whole 6 month period after that, I couldn't write. And then somebody said to me, "Well, just write something silly. Don't think about it too much. Just do something you want to do and write it and get it out of you." So I went for the Infestation idea and wrote that, and then looked around for somewhere to send it, and sent it to Severed Press, and they said, "Oh, we love it. Can you write some more?" Oh, okay then. So and away I went. I ended up. Otherwise, Infestation would have been called Operation Arctic or something.
yeah.
But it's called Infestation because it was the first one, and I hadn't any thought about it becoming a series. So the German edition have changed it to Operation Arctic.
Okay, so
We've got them all in the right order. But yeah, so it's just a one-off idea that came to me back then, and it took off. And I'm now halfway through number 12 now. I'm
wow.
writing Operation Sahara at the moment.
Oh, nice. And I mean, the titles aren't, like, I'm not like, don't want to like offend or anything, but the titles aren't like whiz bang awesome. They just tell you where it's going to be set.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. It doesn't
You
tell
know,
you anything about them. But then the cover, you know that Severed Press do a good job with the covers. So the
yeah.
covers have always got a good clue as to what it's going to be about as you go along as well.
Oh yeah, like the one for Operation Yukon with the werewolf. That one, that I saw that cover, and literally my reaction was, "Oh, you bastard! That's a brilliant cover."
Yeah. I've liked all the covers I've done. They also did, I don't know if you've seen the German edition covers, but they're brilliant as well.
Not, I've seen them for the first, like, Infestation, sorry, Operation Arctic. Let's go with the German name. Operation Antarctica, Operation Amazon. I haven't seen.
Yeah, they've done so far. Yeah, they've done the four so far.
Yep.
I really love what they're doing with the covers as well. I think they're doing really well. And they're
Okay.
selling really well in Germany for me as well, which is good.
Yeah. It's strange where where certain books kind of take off.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got. I don't want to say basically. Basically, it's the Australian version of S Squad. That's what I've got that out, first one, and yeah, it's doing really well in Germany. I'm kind of sitting there going, how? It's got a lot of Australian slang, and it's not been translated yet, but
yeah. The Operation Antarctica, it's all about the Nazis and
yeah.
some of the German reaction to that has been interesting though.
Like people kind of like getting a little uppity about it, or
Yes, some of them have, yes. But it's still selling well, so I don't mind.
well, yeah, that's it. I mean, and I suppose with your, let's say, illustrious career, you don't bother reading reviews.
No. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh yeah, sorry, I thought I dropped the line for a second there.
No, it's okay. So you don't bother reading reviews. Is that something you've always done, or just something?
I used to way back when. Well, actually, when I first started writing, I never got any reviews anyway. For the first 10 years, I was getting nowhere. I was selling stories in the UK small press magazines, not getting paid for any of them, just selling them for copies. And I wasn't never even sure anybody was actually reading them, because you never get any feedback back then, because we weren't online at the time, didn't have any internet in my early career. And it wasn't until early 2000s I started getting somewhere. I got invited into an anthology, a Scottish science fiction anthology, for pro rates, and got a story sold to that. And one day in about 2004, 2005, I was in a big bookshop in Scotland, standing next to likes of Ken MacLeod and Charlie Stott, and Hugo and Nebula award winners.
Wow.
On either side. I was thinking, oh, maybe I can do this. And that gave me the push to try harder, and I started aiming for better markets and selling stuff to bigger presses. You know, there's still small presses that are bigger than the ones I had been selling to.
Yeah.
So it's only really in the past 12 years I started making money out of it. So I was
Okay.
at it for 18 years before I started making any money at all.
Okay, I'll have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, it took me a while.
But I mean, now though you are kind of recognized as being one of the greats. Like Ginger Nuts of Horror call
Yeah,
you Scotland's greatest horror writer.
yeah, that's Jim's a mate.
Okay.
Ginger Nuts of Horror was actually my idea in the first place.
Really?
Yeah, well, Jim was ill. He'd had a bad hand injury. He was off work. Didn't know what to do with himself. This way, 12 years ago, just about. And Jim and I talked online. We were on several horror forums together, and I knew he was Scottish, and we chatted away. And he asked me what I thought he could do to keep him busy when he was off work. I said, well, start a blog, do some reviews. And he said, oh, that's a good idea. I'll call it Ginger something horror, Ginger Nuts of Horror. That'll do. And he went, and since then he's just taken off. He's got millions of views a month and lots of people working with him. He's doing really well at it. But back then it was just a throwaway idea that I said to him, why don't you start writing a blog?
But that's where that's the great thing. Ideas can come from just a very small thing.
Yeah.
Like you said it yourself, like Ray Harryhausen, the old Ray Harryhausen movies, that they've been with you, and they those monsters kind of stick with you, and work into your stories. Same here. I mean, Jason and the Argonauts, those skeletons when they rise up, still gets me.
Yeah, every time. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I watch that film at least once a year.
Same here. Honestly, same here. Some people I know would say it's a guilty pleasure movie. Nah, I'm not guilty about Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah. I actually saw it in the cinema. When I was really young, my dad used to take me to the cinema a lot when I was a kid. I saw that in about 64, 65, something like that, when I was 6 or 7. So that also had an effect. I saw 1 Million Years BC, the Raquel Welch one, the other Harryhausen one. I saw that in the cinema on the big screen as well.
So that would have probably...
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I'm so jealous because there's certain movies like Jason and the Argonauts, that sort of stuff I wish I could have gotten to see.
Yeah.
Because my dad, once again being a bastard, telling me, oh yep, how it looked on the big screen. It's just like, Why do you think, like, specifically Ray Harryhausen? Because everyone now, even nowadays, everyone still talks about him, and he does get a lot of reverence and a lot of admiration, and people say, oh yes, he was the reason I got into movies. Why do you think that's so?
I think he was so obviously a perfectionist, and took a great pride in what he did, put so much effort into getting it right, and I think it showed in the end result as well. There's nothing slapdash about anything Harryhausen ever did, and he loved what he did, and I think it shows in all these movies.
Oh yeah.
If he ever just gone for the money shot, people wouldn't have loved him as much.
Well, yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you think about it, stop motion animation, you've got to be perfect.
Yeah, right. And the dedication it takes, I think, comes through in his films as well.
Oh yeah, I remember here watching a documentary included on the DVD of Jason and the Argonauts, where they're talking to him, and they ask about the Hydra sequence, and he said that was the worst thing I ever did, because not only did he have to keep track of all 7 heads, it was also the way the tails were moving and everything, and if he walked away, he'd come back and he forgot what was happening. They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
I kind of think stop motion animation would be the perfect.
Yeah. I think you have to have the right mindset to do it. I couldn't do it. Certainly, I couldn't do it.
Oh yeah, nah. When I was younger, I did try doing stop motion animation just with my Hot Wheel cars, and yeah, nah, it doesn't. It was shocking. So you said that for you, like when you write S Squad, it's like an action movie.
Yeah.
Is that intentional, or is it just because of all the?
It's just the way it runs in my head. Most of my stuff comes to me visually anyway. I think it must be from all the movies I watched as a kid. The way my writing mind works, it starts with an image before anything else, and the story runs from. The way I explained it was, it starts like a photograph and turns into a movie.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So a lot of the things come to me like single images first of all, and then it runs either forwards or backwards into the story.
Okay.
So, very strangely, it's the way it works. My first novel, Island Life, is a Scottish monster movie, and the idea for that came to me when I was standing in a lighthouse, just looking at a lighthouse, and it had a burial ground in front of the lighthouse, and I thought, took the picture, and then afterwards, looking at the picture, I thought, well, what if someone was coming up out of the burial mound, attacking the lighthouse, and that ran from there. So that was my first one. And ever since then, a lot of my work's come to me like that.
Okay.
See an image and the idea comes from it.
That's actually really cool, and I mean that sounds very similar to that Ray Bradbury story, The Lighthouse, that Harryhausen used for was it the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Right, yeah, that's right. That's another favourite as well.
Oh, yeah. There's just something about the Harryhausen movies that you just like the one with the was it the Emir?
Yes, 20 million miles from Earth.
That's it. That one. Okay, yeah, it's a creature feature, but you feel really bad for the Emir when it's being attacked and everything. You just
feel sad for it when it dies at the end as well.
Just like with King Kong.
Yeah, that's right. Which was Harryhausen's first big inspiration as well.
Oh yeah, I still remember the first time I saw the original King Kong. I just, I wasn't crying, but I was just sitting there going, "Why'd they do that to the monkey?"
Yeah.
And even now,
I still get that reaction from that film as well.
Yeah, even now I still have that reaction. And some people I know look at me like, "You're an idiot." And I mean, speaking to other authors, some say that for them, writing action is very hard, or writing action is boring.
Yeah.
For you, it seems like it's easy.
It's the way it comes to me. I think, yeah. I can't really explain it. It's just I seem to work better the faster it goes. So the more action there is in the book, the more I enjoy writing it, and the faster it comes to it. And it just all goes. And then it's also, for me, it comes from a love of the old pulp writers as well. Like I read all the Tarzan books when I was a kid, and John Carter books, and a lot of the Conan stuff, the Robert E. Howard stuff, and all of that. It comes out in my writing as well. And,
yeah.
I've also tried my hand at heroic fantasy a couple of times as well, and they're full of mayhem and disaster, big barbarians hacking around with swords, and that's the sort of things. That stuff just I love writing.
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook version of Berserker.
Yeah.
And that one felt very much like it was a Robert E. Howard kind of story.
Yeah, it was meant to be, and that was the way it came out as well. So
you succeeded.
You
definitely succeeded with that. So yesterday I was talking to Edward McFadden.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the fact that some people will try to insult him by saying he's a paperback writer.
Yeah. I'm quite happy to take on the mantle.
Right, that was going to be the question.
Yeah.
If someone says, "Oh yeah, William Meikle is a pulp writer," for you, you're like,
"Yep, definitely." I'll say yes. Of course, I am. People have tried to insult me by saying it over the years, and I just say, "Nope, that's not an insult." I'm quite happy.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at Lovecraft. He wasn't technically pulp, but he did he fit in with that. He was friends with Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs. You look at was it Doc Savage?
Yeah, all of that lot. I'd have been happy. I'd have been happy writing at that time in the pulps, actually doing that kind of stuff. I think I could churn out pulp novels quite happily back then.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, in a way, Severed Press is kind of doing that.
Yes.
So you are doing it.
Yeah, I'm doing it now. Yeah.
Well, that's it. And I mean, like you seem to really enjoy this, like this style of writing.
Yes, I do. Yeah, and it's getting me readers as well. I mean, since the last 3 years doing a lot of work for Severed Press, I've made more money than I was making any time before.
Wow.
Last 3 years have been the best 3 years of my career so far, and that's just all due to the S Squad.
Okay, so that's why you said earlier that you were going to just focus more on S Squad.
Yeah, yeah. I've started another series with Severed Press as well. There's one called The Land Below.
Oh yes.
Last year, I've sent them the Sea Below, which is the next one up, and after this S Squad book, I'm going to be working on The City Below. So that's because I always wanted to do a Hollow Earth series. So that's what this is going to be: just Victorian adventurers under the earth, and the inspiration for them comes from those old Doug McClure movies, the Land That Time Forgot, and all those ones. So that's where that's going. That's again, it's more pulp stuff.
Yeah. And what is it about writing pulp that you just enjoy so much?
I think it runs in my head like a film. So it's like watching a film that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So it's like watching an old movie. It runs in my head like an old movie. So basically, I'm creating 1950s and 60s movies in my head and then writing them down.
That's funny. I was a while ago. I was talking to another author, not Severed related, but he was thinking about submitting to Severed, and I said to him, thinking about it like this: you're writing adaptations of 80s action horror movies.
Yes. No, it's similar to me. I'm doing them for 60s and 70s action movies, but not 80s. But basically similar, very similar. Runs in my head.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like you said that you've been playing around with the high fantasy barbarian stuff. Are you kind of going to not imitate but follow like your favorite pulp authors? Like you've done your Carnacki, you've done your Sherlock Holmes, you've done your Lovecraft, you're doing your your serials.
Yes, that's right.
You've done your Conan, you've done your Robert E. Howard stuff. Is there any other author from that period of time that you kind of like what they're doing? I'm going to.
Yeah, I think I've covered most of the ones I wanted to do already. I'd love to write a John Carter novel. If anybody who's ever got the rights to the John Carter books off here, Riceburg's estate, I'd love to do one, but I don't think I'd ever get a chance. I suppose I could write a Sword and Planet book with a different character, but I won't get around to that. I've also got an idea in my head for a big fantasy, like a George R.R. Martin type 6-book blockbuster thing. I don't know if I'll ever get time to write that down though, but that's been brewing in my head for many years. But that's a couple of years long commitment to get that down, and I'm not sure I want to commit myself to it. We'll see how it goes.
If you're having so much fun with the squaddies and all the other stuff you're working on, I mean, my mentality.
As I say, I'm 63 now. So slow. I thought I'd be slowing down a bit by now, but not much sign of it yet.
No, I mean, like, you seem to be putting out like maybe 1 or 2 Squad books per year, kind of thing. And I mean, they're not terribly. They're not like big monstrous books. They're usually around the 40,000 word mark. Do you really care about word counts, or
no? It's a story. It just depends how long the story is. But the S Squad all seem to sort of happen at the same. I'm getting into the feel for the S Squad pace of the books, and I think I could write one on spec now. If somebody said to me, "I need a 35,000 word action horror book, starting at this kind of point and ending at this kind of point, away you go and write it," and I probably could now, because somebody gave me a basic idea and said 35,000 words by end of the month, please. Okay, there you go. Now we go and do it. I've got, as I say, I've got a feel for pacing, and I think that's something that's come with the experience of writing so many of them over the years. So I wrote quite before the Severed Press stuff. I was with a company called Dark Fuse. You remember them?
The name's familiar.
Yeah, they're a big American company publishing lots of people who went bust. But I was writing 3 novels a year for them for a couple of years. So I got into a mindset of pacing that, and I think I learned how to pace a novel by doing that. I wrote 12 novels in 3 years.
Whoa.
For them. And I think that's what got me the grounding in pacing a novel or a novella. And when it came to the S Squad, it just felt natural to get into the swing of it.
Yeah, and I mean they do move fast, but that does kind of fit into the whole, that sort of old 60s kind of movie feel that you were saying. It like the more I'm talking to you, the more everything you're saying is like, oh yeah, that actually makes perfect sense when you read it. I mean, like when you okay, gonna change a little bit to talk about the actual craft now. Okay. I've always been curious about like how you do you do outlines for?
Very basic ones, less than a page.
Okay.
Just a couple of paragraphs usually, and I very rarely stick to them anyway, because once I get going, fingers take over and things happen. And so outlines for me are changeable as they go along, basically.
Yep.
I find myself changing the outline after every chapter just about most of the time.
Wow. And so for you, the outline is just so you know where you're starting from and where you're ending, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about it. And usually the ending changes anyway.
And have you ever written an outline and then you've finished the story, whether it was a novel, novella, or a short story, and you've kind of gone, oh hell, it actually matches up?
Yeah, once. Not very often. They'll give them many books I've written. But there's not very. What was the one that went all the way through without? Oh yeah, one called The Dunfield Terror, which is set here in Newfoundland during a winter storm. And I had the idea during a winter storm, and I wrote down the plot, and that one stuck almost exactly to what I wanted, and I was very surprised. It came out exactly what I wanted in the first place, but that's very rarely happened.
Okay. And obviously you don't really care either way because there's all, once the creativity takes over, that's it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you get lost in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
It's addictive, isn't it?
Oh yes, definitely. I wouldn't still be doing it after 30 odd years if it wasn't. Yeah.
Well, not unless you're crazy.
Yeah. Well, there is that too.
Well, every author is a little crazy. That's something doing these interviews, I've discovered that. And I mean, so you said the Dunfield Terror.
Yeah.
That's 100% Lovecraft.
Yes.
And I mean,
it's actually, to me, it's about 50% Lovecraft and 50% Quatermass.
Okay.
I think that one came a lot from the British science fiction of the Doctor Who and Quatermass ideas.
Yeah.
So I think for me, a lot of Nigel Neal stuff came into Dunfield Terror. So not quite all Lovecraftian for my.
No, but yeah, no. So see, once again, you're saying that I'm like, oh hell yeah. That's actually it's obvious. Because in Australia we get Doctor Who, we got Quatermass, we got all that sort of stuff. John Wyndham stuff. The Days of the Triffid, all that sort of stuff. So
Nigel Neal and Wyndham were both big influences on me as well back in the 60s and 70s. I read all those books and watched all the Nigel Neal stuff in the telly.
Yeah.
And Nigel Neal especially. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a Nigel Neal thing called The Stone Tape.
No, don't know that one.
There's a TV play back in 72. It was showed over Christmas. It's basically, the idea is that memories and emotions can get transferred into the stone of your houses.
Oh.
And certain vibrations bring them back out again.
Okay.
Ghosts are the vibrations that were stored on the walls. And if you've got the right technology, you can read the vibrations and find the history of the house and stuff. So that's an idea that's come through. It's also very, very scary.
Yeah.
That's one of the scariest things I've ever seen. If you look up the Stone Tape on the internet, you'll find a lot of people saying it's the scariest thing they've ever seen on telly.
Wow.
And it was for me. I was 14 at the time and it had a big impact on me at the time. But anyway, that idea has come through quite a lot in my writing over the years as well. I've got a series of novellas and short stories called the Sigils and Totems stuff. I don't know if you come across them, but a lot of that comes directly from Nigel Neal's stuff.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because Quatermass is very that one's a little hard to kind of get your head around the first time you watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I know that is important, but I don't know why it's important.
Yeah. Nigel Neal's a bit like that. He's a great ideas man as well, and he's good at weaving them into stories and then making you think about them later.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've only seen Quatermass once because I'm a little afraid. I'm a little afraid of going back to it.
There was 3 TV series in the 50s in Britain. And there's 3 films. There's 2 old black and white Quatermass movies, and then there's a Quatermass in the Pit one.
It was the Quatermass in the Pit. That's the one I saw.
Yeah, that was my favourite one. But there's a 4th TV series done in the 80s as well in Britain, and that didn't really get anywhere. It wasn't quite as good. But all of them, I've loved all of them so far.
Okay.
He also wrote the Halloween movie that nobody likes, Halloween 3.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love that film as well. But I can never find anybody else that does.
Oh no. I mean, it's funny. I remember watching Halloween 3 as a kid, and just sitting there going, "Oh help!" Because we don't, like in Australia, we don't really celebrate Halloween the way they do in the USA. But the idea of those masks and everything, I just was like, "Oh hell no!"
Yeah.
And then I got older, and as you do with your friends, you kind of get together to have sleepovers and watch the movies you shouldn't watch.
Yeah. Right.
And so we watched the first Halloween movie, and they're all going, "Oh my god, that's so scary!" And I'm sitting there thinking, "No, Halloween 3 was scarier."
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Halloween 3 definitely scared me more.
Oh yeah, and it was one of the first big American movies I ever saw that brought up Sam Hain as well.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm a diehard John Carpenter fan.
Yeah, me too.
You're a man with taste.
Yeah.
I mean, so okay, you're talking about Doctor Who, Nigel Neal, these great British science fiction, and even Doctor Who was quite scary at times.
Oh, yeah.
I remember for me, I started watching Doctor Who with Trial of a Time Lord. From that, from that point on, and my favorite Doctor was Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah.
And some of those stories with Sylvester McCoy is real trippy, but also really unnerving.
Yes. I actually saw the first ever episode of Doctor Who on telly when it broadcast.
With William Hartnell.
Yeah, 1963. I was just before my 6th birthday. I remember watching it, and it was the day after Kennedy got assassinated. It got broadcast.
Whoa.
I remember both of those events, and that made me a Doctor Who fan for life. So I've been watching since the first day, basically.
Oh wow. You've been around for a lot of momentous moments.
Yeah, in the genre, yeah.
Wow.
It helped that my mum's a science fiction fan. So she always watched anything science fiction that came on the telly way back then. She watched, so I got to watch it as well.
Okay.
Like the original, the old Lost in Space American series was on when I was a kid, and all the Jerry Anderson things like
Thunderbirds
and Supercar, Fireball XL5.
Yep.
And Fireball XL5 was the one that was running when I was a kid, and moved on to Stingray, and then Thunderbirds came along, Captain Scarlet. So all of them were on when I was a kid. So I grew up with all of them. And then, of course, by the time I was 10, Star Trek came along from the States, so I started watching that. So I've been in all those things from the very beginning.
Wow. I mean, I my mum and dad both were science teachers. And so growing up as a kid, on not because they'd already aired, but watching on TV reruns of Thunderbirds. I love Thunderbirds. I had the the big toy of Thunderbird 2. I love that. Tracy Island. Watching Lost in Space, all that stuff. Doctor Who. And I mean, you could say that they are cheesy, and sometimes the effects are quite janky.
Yeah.
and I've shown it to friends, and they're like, why are you showing me this? This is terrible.
We didn't have any choice because we wasn't doing anything else about it.
but that's the thing. Even though there was no choice, the stories, like, it didn't really matter about the janky effects. For me, the stories were interesting.
Oh yeah.
Like the idea of the Time Lords with being able to regenerate, not only is it a new life, it's also a different personality just with the memories. That's actually pretty frightening when you think about it.
Yeah.
So are you ever going to kind of go more in direction of like that sort of thing, like the Doctor Who kind of stories, or Nigel Neal?
I would like to, actually. I'd like to write some more science fiction and horror crossover type things. Whether I ever get a chance to do it, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sort of hooked into the Escort at the moment, and everything else is just secondary to that. But I've just signed up with American company Silver Shamrock. Have you heard of them?
Yep.
I've signed up with them to do 3 collections of short stories over the next 3 years. One a year for the next 3 years.
Nice.
So I might get some science fiction stuff sort of shoehorned in there. We'll see how that goes.
Nice. That's really impressive, man.
Yeah.
The more I talk to you, the more you're becoming like an author hero.
I think it's just the fact I write a lot. I mean, I do about 2,000 words a day every day.
Yep.
That builds up to an awful lot of words over the course of a year.
Oh yeah. And is that easy for you to do?
Yeah, especially since I became retired, basically. I haven't had to work for the past. When we moved over here just before my 50th birthday, I haven't worked since then. So I've been writing full time for the past 14 years. So, and it's a lot of words, so it just all piles up.
Oh yeah, and I mean, would you be doing anything else?
No.
Oh, come on.
Yes, I spent 25 years building computer systems for people, and I've had enough of that kind of stuff.
Oh, come on. What if they came to you and said, we want you to write the novelization of Doctor Who novelizations instead of the Escort stuff?
That, yeah.
So as long as it's still writing, you'd be there.
I nearly wrote a Judge Dredd book.
No way.
About 12 years ago, they were looking for people to write Judge Dredd stories. And I pitched them a Judge Dredd versus Cthulhu.
That would have been brilliant.
And I got half of it written. And then the editors changed at the company and he dubbed me. So I've got somewhere on a disc, I've got half of a Judge Dredd versus Cthulhu book. I can't do anything with it.
That's something I would love to read that. I'm a fan.
I don't even know where it is now, because it was 12, 13 years ago now or something like that, a while back. But I'd love to have seen that one in print.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you could basically create your own kind of Judge Dredd-ish character and still do it.
Yeah, I know.
You just have to make sure that no one can say it's Judge Dredd. As long as you
there is too much in it. There was too much in it that was just, that's definitely Judge Dredd. You can't just take it out, I don't think. So I was having a lot of fun with it. And I thought about finishing it anyway, but I never got around to it.
Oh no, I mean, I just trying to picture, someone who is so who is the law going up against, a creature that has no concept of law or order. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it was good fun. I was having a lot of fun with it. That was the one I had to actually write a whole synopsis for that one, because it was part of the contract. So I had a 6 or 7 page synopsis for that one.
Wow.
It's still hanging around somewhere as well, I suppose.
Oh, that's amazing. And is that a big thing for you, having fun while you're writing?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, I don't think.
Yep. Okay. And have you ever kind of had an idea for a story, you've started to write it, and then you kind of hit that point, you're like, I'm not enjoying this. This is not fun.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. Yeah, I've got a couple of half novels on the disc that I ran out of fun with.
So do you just give up, or do you try to figure out, okay, what went wrong?
No, I usually just give up, actually. Not a big one for self-analysis in that kind of way.
Okay, see, because for me, same thing. If I'm not having fun, if I'm writing and then all of a sudden I go, this is not fun anymore, I actually kind of go, okay, why? Figure out where it went wrong, and then start from that point to make sure it's fun again.
Yeah. Sometimes I have backtracked and cut out non-fun parts sometimes, but not very often. I usually just dump it and start something else.
Okay, so I think I don't remember which author said it, but one of the big authors had has a rule, which is only write the parts people will read.
Yeah.
That seems like that's the S Squad wrapped up in a perfect description.
Yeah, I try not to try to leave out the boring bits, basically.
Yeah. So how do you quantify the boring bits?
It's hard to tell, but I know it when I'm doing it. Writing along, nah, this is dull. Go backwards. Back to those dull bits. I think it's when I find myself over describing things. I tend to stop and delete the descriptions and go backwards and make it more dialogue driven than description driven. And I think that's why the S Squad works. It's more driven by the dialogue than anything else.
Oh yeah, and see, for me, my version of that is okay. Same thing. I kind of look at everything as a movie. So if I'm writing it and I get to a scene, I'm like, hang on, that would be cut out, and they would skip this in a movie. That's when it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a very big reader, but also a very big movie and TV guy.
Yeah.
Because most authors I've spoken to, when when you talk about their inspirations, they instantly rattle off all these authors and all these novels, and a lot of them seem to ignore movies.
No, I'm the opposite actually. For me, it's more from movie and telly. I can appreciate other writers and look at them, but I don't get influenced by writers as much as I do by movies and TV.
And is that just more because you're more visual?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So, if you had to say, someone comes up to you and says, Willie, your top 10, movie and TV show inspirations, the thing that, things that you kind of carry with you since you saw them.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Harryhausen movies. Any Harryhausen movies, basically. Things like Where Eagles Dare was a big influence, the Richard Burton one.
Yep.
I loved that movie when I was a kid. Dragged my dad to see it 3 or 4 times in the cinema way back then. But I'm also a big fan of American noir movies, old ones, Bogart movies in particular. I'm a big Humphrey Bogart fan. I have been all my life. That came from my granddad, who was a Bogart fan and used to sit and watch some of these wee black and white telly at home. And I'd sit and watch things like The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep with him.
Oh yeah, and I mean, the first time I saw Bogart was in Casablanca. No, African Queen. It was the African Queen was my first Bogart movie, and my reaction was, why is there no one like that nowadays?
Yeah, I know. He just every time he was on screen, you couldn't take your eyes off him.
Oh yeah,
he's a brilliant actor. So it was actually The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep got me into reading a lot of American crime novels as well. So I read all the Raymond Chandler stuff, the Dashiell Hammett stuff, and even the Mickey Spillane stuff. I read all of them, and they've been a big influence in another branch of my writing. I've got a Scottish private eye character called the Midnight Eye, Derek Adams.
Oh yeah,
and I've written 3 novels for him and a whole load of novellas and short stories. And he's been with me since the very beginning of my writing career. First thing I ever wrote was for him because he's based in a flat in Glasgow next door to the one I used to live in when I was there. So back then I was writing what I knew. I was writing about the streets of Glasgow, and the character that came to me from that one. And he's been with me ever since. I'm still writing stories with him in them 30 years later.
Wow.
But he was based on Bogart, basically. A Scottish version of Bogart.
I'm going to have to check it out now.
He even bought a trilby.
Oh wow, you're really paying homage to the man.
Yeah, he smokes too much, drinks too much, and gets into trouble a lot.
Okay, what's the definition of drinks too much and smokes too much? How do you quantify that?
I used to be a smoker, and I was on 2 packs a day.
Oh, okay.
For me, that would have been too much.
Yeah, I smoke cigars because they're really cheap here in Mexico, and I know one of my best friends here. He's from Derry in Northern Ireland, and that's something you don't expect to hear. Irishmen living in Mexico, and he smokes like 2 packs a day, and for him, it's normal.
Yeah,
I just
it was starting to affect my health, and I gave up. So I've been smoke free for 12, 22 years now.
wow.
Gave up
So
when I was just after my 40th birthday. But before that, I was smoking a lot.
wow.
The 2 packs a day was what classes too much. As for drinking, that's a different story. I used to be a very heavy drinker in my youth. I was drinking like up to 16 pints of beer a day, and
Whoa.
some scotch on top of that as well. I think I was incipient alcoholic at one point, but after I met my wife here, she cut me down. So I still drink, but nowhere to that level anymore.
Okay.
I had a couple of years where I was basically spending every penny I had on booze,
Whoa.
booze and fags, basically.
There's the title of your autobiography right there.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine drinking that much.
I still like beer, but I keep it down to just a couple of pints at a time now.
Okay. But still 16 pints a day. That just
Yeah.
my liver hurts hearing that.
Where I come from, it was definitely what part of the culture was drinking, going out drinking. I
Yeah.
grew up around drinkers. My dad was a big beer drinker. My granddad was a big beer drinker, and all their friends were big beer drinkers. When I first, my first pint I ever had was bought by my dad when I was 14. He took
Wow.
me out for a pint and introduced me to beer, and then I started going down to the pubs in my hometown. My dad and all his mates would be there as well. It was a social thing, and I say my dad he could drink 16 pints in one session in an evening. Down the pub at 5 o'clock, and by the time that shut at 11, he'd had 16 pints inside him. And so I grew up thinking that was a sort of things people did.
Yeah,
So
that's all you know. It's the norm.
yeah. It was only after I went to university and met other people, and they sort of looked at me the way I was drinking, and they started telling me it wasn't normal.
It sounds like where you're from, drinking is a sport.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very much a working class Scottish working town, and the only respite they got from their jobs was going down the pub, basically.
Yeah.
So the pub was basically the social hub, and drinking was the way to avoid thinking about work or something.
I know that sort of atmosphere. My dad's brother used to live in a town called Rockley. Now Rockley, I'm not joking. It's the perfect setting for a horror movie. You drive 6 hours. Actually, it's 4 hours drive from Sydney, heading into the western part of New South Wales.
Yeah.
Okay. You hit a mount. You go over a mountain, and once you hit this mountain, you lose signal for your mobile phone.
Yep.
It's in a valley. Okay, so this small. It's not even a town. It's that small. It's something like 20 houses, a church, a disused police station, a bar/convenience store.
Yep.
So that sort of place. You walk into the bar, everyone stops and looks at you.
Yeah. My hometown's like that.
Yeah, so I understand that sort of, if nothing else
There's
to
a-
do.
Population was 5,000, I think, at the time, and it had 23 pubs.
Okay, so that's something like, 2 pubs for every person, basically.
It's a lot of pubs for a small town.
Yeah, kind of like how Tim Hortons is for Canada.
That's right. Yeah. We have Tim Hortons here. We have pubs in Scotland.
I'd rather go with the pubs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you've got you've got your crime novel with your Scottish protagonist. You've got the squaddies. How important is it for you to to make sure when you write you keep your heritage, your culture, everything in your writing, or is it just a byproduct?
It's a byproduct, really, because I've written quite a lot of stuff set here in Newfoundland now since I moved here as well. But the Scottish stuff will always be with me. It's still always important because family's still over there as well. So I've still got mom and dad who are both in. Dad's 86, my mom's 85. They're still back home. So I've got 2 sisters still back in Scotland as well, and a lot of friends still back there. So I'll never lose that part of it. So writing about Scottish stuff is important because there's not that many people writing Scottish horror either.
Yeah.
And so I like to think I'm doing my bit to keeping it alive.
Oh yeah, and I mean when you think of like military horror, everyone kind of has their ideas of US stuff.
Yeah.
So then for the squaddies to come in and kind of kind of level the playing field. It is
That's right,
like if you're not used to I'm going to say just generalization, the UK sense of humor and that sort of thing, it can be quite a like what the hell. But I grew up watching Doctor Who. I grew up watching all of the British gangster movies. My dad could get me all the Michael Caine stuff, The Italian Job, Get Carter, Dog Soldiers is a big favorite, all that all that sort of stuff. So for me, reading Esquad, it's just like, oh, I know what this means. I know all this.
I know these guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a lot of British people who read the Esquad come to me and say, "Yeah, we recognise these guys." So I've done something right with them, I think.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I get the feeling that you're most proud of the Esquad stuff.
In a way, yes. Yeah, I think so. It's sort of it's come towards the end of my career at the time, but I was thinking about it, but I'm doing really well with them, and I'm enjoying them, and I think so. I think it's probably the thing I get the most pleasure out of. I also got a lot of pleasure out of my first short story collection, because that's what I wanted to do when I started. I wanted to write a supernatural short story collection, and that Regent's Press did that for me with a book called, what did I call it again? Dark Melodies, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a collection of short stories, and when I started it, that's all I wanted was a hardback book of short stories that I'd written, and so that I was very proud of that and very happy with that, and I think I always will be. But things have moved on a bit since then.
Just a little bit. And I mean, what? Okay, you're working on. You said Operation Sahara.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you've got the three short stories. I'll try that again. Yeah. The 3 collections for Silver Shamrock.
Yeah, and I've got another one of I was talking about the Hollow Earth one earlier. I've got another one of them to write as well. I'm going to have to come up with some more ideas for the Esquad for Gary. I've actually pitched. I've had 12 books now. Well, I'm on number 12 at the moment, but I think I've pitched 50 ideas to him.
Okay.
12 books of it. So I've got 38 old Esquad ideas that will never get written. So it's getting more difficult to come up with new ones that I haven't actually really pitched to him.
Well, I mean, you could always write them and self-publish.
Yeah. I might do. I'll just change them slightly. So I keep wanting to do a big Lovecraftian Esquad story, but Gary won't go for it. He doesn't want any.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit the Severed model. Because I pitched him a Lovecraft story too, and he instantly was like, no.
Yeah, I've pitched some several Lovecraftian ones. I wanted to do a Mothman story for them, but he wouldn't go for that either. And then so I thought, okay, we'll try a Montauk time travel Philadelphia experiment one with them. He wouldn't go for that either. So several he won't go for. So I just have to keep coming up with new creature features for him, I think. And,
I would say
the next one I want to pitch him is an Australian outback one. They haven't been to Australia yet. So I want to do an Operation Australia.
Okay.
We'll have to see how that goes.
Operation Down Under.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I'm working on. I'm going to be pitching him one with my guys for set in Australia too, because they are Australia. I'd be curious to see how the Squaddies would do there.
Yeah, me too. We'll just see how they can take them next. But we'll have to wait and see what Gary goes for.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, because you never know what he'll say yes to.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he says yes to the Australian ones, I'm happy to I'm happy to like help out with the Australian slang and all that for characters. And
good to know.
Oh yeah, I did the same with Lucas Peterson for his book Clint Clusterfuck. He had it set in Australia, and I said, send it to me. I'll let you know if the slang is right.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you like doing something like Operation Yukon, Operation Amazon, how much research do you put into the location, or is it?
It varies. So some of them are some more than others. The Yukon one didn't have much research at all because it just came very quickly. But the Antarctica one, I did quite a bit of research into Nazi bases and submarines and stuff.
Yeah,
there's quite a lot of that in there. But as I said, it varies book by book. Some of them I don't need much research at all, just make it all up in my head. That's another thing. You get readers coming to you and say, where do you get your ideas from? What do you read to get your ideas? And say, well, I make it up in my head. And they don't believe you. I make shit up for a living.
But that's the thing. My dad once said, if you become a big famous author, your business cards, R.F. Blackstone, professional bullshitter.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Make shit up.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. It's one of the nicer things he said to me. Yeah, well, that's the thing for me. I hate being asked where you get your ideas from. I hate that question. It's why I never ask it, really. Because every author can't.
The answer is always, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, see, that's the thing. I used to dread that, and my mum gave me the best answer and the scariest answer you could think of as well. She said to me, "This is what you tell people, Richard. You say when you're a child, in the back garden lived some elves, and at night they would come into your room and whisper these horrible, terrible things into your ears." And she's telling me this, and she's going into great detail. My dad and I were just sitting there going, where the hell is this coming from?
Elves, that's a good one, actually. I like the idea of elves whispering stories.
There you go, the squaddies against brownies.
Yeah, I thought about that as well, because my great granny actually had a brownie in the house.
Really?
Yeah, she always said she had helped her out with things in the house, and she insisted it was there. None of us ever saw it, but my granny insisted she had a brownie in the house. But then again, she was Irish.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's actually a perfect way of saying it. Yeah, I get that. My dad's family was from Ireland. My grandma, she really, she'd play up the old stories and all that sort of stuff. The gift of the gab.
Yeah.
So, will you ever do that? Will you ever do a story with the squaddies set in Scotland?
I've done one. Did Operation Loch Ness.
Oh yes, you did. Yes, I can't believe I forgot that. Sorry.
And also Operation North Sea is mostly in Scotland as well. So I've done a couple. I was thinking about one set in one of the big Scottish universities as well, with an experiment gone wrong. And I might pitch that one to Gary next as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could always go do one where it's set in Switzerland and Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. So you've got a lot on your plate to keep you busy for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I know. As I said, I can feel the age creeping up in me. I think I've got less time ahead of me than behind me. So,
but you're not slowing down with the writing. That's the thing.
Yeah, I know. I'm enjoying my retirement here. I'm enjoying myself here. I've started collecting a pension from that IT job I had now as well.
Oh, okay.
So I don't actually have the financial need to work as hard that I did have until then. But I'm still writing. I don't think I will slow down much.
Oh, nah. I mean, you love it. It's obviously that this is what you were meant to do. So, that some people I know said if you ever stop writing, you'll die. That's what they've said to me. So I think when you've got it, that's it. It's the only thing.
I'm getting too old to be either an astronaut or a rock star now. So
come on, Mick Jagger can still get there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Don't give up your dreams, okay?
When I was a kid, it was an astronaut I wanted to be, because I grew up. I was 11 when the first moon landing, and I sat and watched that in the telly as well. Wow. Sat up watching the moon landing, and at that age, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to go into space. Never quite happened. I did get to be a scientist. So I've got a degree in botany, of all things.
Oh, wow.
And I worked for a year in research, nearly 2 years in research before I fell into an IT career.
Wow. So you could always have the squaddies go up against a killer of plants.
Yeah.
Then you can use your...
I wrote, there's a proto-squaddy book called The Creeping Kelp of mine. And that's the killer plant story that I always wanted to. That's my John Wyndham homage. If that had been 2 or 3 years later after writing that one, that would probably have become an S-Squad book. Yep. That's like a proto S-Squad. There's another proto S-Squad one called Crustaceans about killer crabs, giant crabs. That started out as I was going to write a book with Guy Smith
Oh, okay.
A Killer Crabs book with him, because he sent me an idea and said, I don't have time to write this. Do you want to write it and put our names on it? And I said, yeah, I'll write that. So we started doing it. And then Guy decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And I said, oh, well, do you mind if I finish it? I said, and he said, no, go ahead, finish it. So I've got my Killer Crabs book out there.
Wow. I like Guy Smith. That's actually
Yeah,
that's
a missed opportunity. Guy was a really nice guy. He died just before Christmas this year. He's a really nice guy. We corresponded quite a lot over the years. He's a bit of a role model, because he's definitely another one. Is just, if somebody said to him, "You're a pulp writer," he'd have said, "Yep."
Oh yeah, yeah. And his stuff is getting a lot of attention at the moment. Like on like some of the Facebook groups I'm part of. You know, people are showing these massive collection of Guy Smith books.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He used to. I missed out on them. He used to hold a convention in his house every year for fans, and about 30. He'd take 30 fans in at a time, and he'd sell them all copies of his books for a tenner or stuff like that as well, and he'd feed them all. Best way to run a convention: go to the author's house and have a meal with him.
Oh yeah, you'd have to make sure no one's going to be pilfering anything.
That's right, yeah. Man. Well, Guy was also a big shotgun fan, but he was a rifle fan. His house was full of guns, so I don't think anybody would steal anything from him.
Probably not. Oh wow. So, oh man, you're definitely becoming an author hero. Just hearing all this stuff. When I grow up, I want to be like you now. So, you know, a young author comes up to you, random young author, not this, okay, says, I want to get into it. I want to get into it. You know, the S Squad books, they've inspired me, Willie. What's the one piece of advice you give them?
Sit in your arse and write. There's no other way to do it. There's no way around it. You just got to put the hours in and get the work done. There's no quick fix. Sit down and write and see where it takes you. It doesn't matter how you do it. You do it longhand. You can do it on a computer. You can do it, dictate it even. But get the words down somehow. Get it out of your head into paper, and then see what you can do with it.
That makes perfect sense. Everyone, other authors I've asked that same question to have said things like, be true to yourself. Write from a place of truth. Be who you are. All that sort of stuff. You're the first one to actually say, sit down and do it.
Yeah.
Do you think nowadays that people are too focused on the theory of writing more than the actual?
People get hung up in the theory, and they sit there and they worry about whether they're doing it right, or whether they're literary enough, or whether they're using the right words. And I don't subscribe to that. Just get the thing down on paper and then see what you can do with it. Is my philosophy. I'm not really. I don't spend hours searching for the right word. I get a word down and then decide later on whether it's right or not.
That's it, yeah. Because you can fix it all in editing if you need to. Right. Yeah,
I'm a great believer in getting the flow right and getting the pacing right, and worrying about everything else later.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that just comes completely from movies, because if you watch a movie and the flow and the pacing is off, it's terrible.
yeah, and it's noticeable. And if you write enough, you get to the stage of noticing it in your writing as well.
Yep. Oh yeah, like my current work in progress, I know for a fact the first half of the book is going to be where I'm having the most things cut out.
Yeah.
And that's how it usually is. The ending of my books, because it is more action towards the end, it's easier to edit. Whereas the opening is like setting everything up, introducing everyone and all that stuff. That's where I'm kind of like, oh, can't I just pretend everyone knows these characters and just get to the stuff?
I get exactly the same feeling. Can't we just pretend that all this stuff's happened already? Get on with
it. But that's the good thing of having the squaddies, because you already know them, so you don't need to reintroduce them unless they're new members of the squad or anything like that. But you've got the dynamics so firmly in place, you can just get straight to it.
Yeah. I think that's what I like about them as well, because I can sit down and start without having to worry about any of the setup.
Yeah, and the good thing about the squaddy books is that you don't really need to read them in like complete order. You can pick them up, because I picked up Operation Antarctica first, and then went back and read Infestation, and I kind of jump all over the place. And I still, there's not a big continuation. They are very individual.
Yeah, and it's deliberately done like that so people can pick them up at different points and still understand what's going on.
Oh yeah. And was that something was that your idea, or was that something Gary said to do?
No, it was my idea. It's always the way I wanted to do it. Yeah.
Okay. And those prototype Squatty stories that you mentioned, will you ever kind of take them off, rejigger them, and say to Gary, look, we've got 2 more already written?
No, because they're still in print.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I have thought about doing another Killer Crabs one. I might pitch that to Gary, and reuse some of the stuff. I was going to write a sequel to that one as well.
Okay.
I've got a plot for a sequel written down, so maybe get that one as well.
Well, if you go with the giant crabs one, you could call it Operation Maine.
Yeah.
You could have them kill Stephen King.
Yeah.
I don't take anything I say seriously in regards to ideas. So, do you also, like, from when you first started 30 odd years ago to now? This is probably a very stupid question, but the publishing world has changed drastically.
Oh yeah.
Do you think it's changed for the better?
There's a lot more opportunities now. There are definitely a lot more markets to pick up stories from. There's very few markets I could have sent my early stories to that would have made me money. Looking back on it, and now there's the proliferation of the internet. There's hundreds of them, so there's definitely a lot more opportunity now than there was back then. Whether the quality is that much better or not, I don't know.
Yeah, especially with self-publishing, it's given everyone the opportunity to write something and say, here it is.
Yeah, there's definitely a quality argument. I do read a bit more dross than I used to read. I don't know whether that's because there's more dross around or whether I'm not as selective as I used to be.
Column A, column B, I'd say.
Yeah.
So how do you guarantee, how do you keep your quality where it is?
I actually don't think about it that much. I just write, and I know I've got a certain amount of confidence in my own style and the way I do things, that I can produce readable fiction, and I think that's good enough for me.
Okay. So you have a very, very laid back approach to all of this.
I have a very laid back approach to just about everything.
Oh no, I'm getting that feeling. It is the I growing up in Australia, Irish family's best friend here is Irish. Knowing a lot of people from UK, interacting with people from Scotland in university and all that, it is that Australia and the UK very, very close with, and especially Scottish, very close in sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I gather you'll continue to write until you have no more stories to tell, which I doubt will happen, or it's just no longer fun.
Yeah, until it's no longer fun, basically. Yeah, or I get too old for it.
Oh, come on!
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
I might get aged out of the market. You never know.
I can't see that happening. I mean,
Yeah.
not unless you start doing the old man, get off my lawn, you young.
Yeah, I'm not about to do that, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, a lot of people are surprised when they realise that I'm 63, because people think I'm in my 30s. A lot of times they get surprised when they actually see me. Well,
see, that's the thing. Because I researched before this today. I did research on you, and seeing your profile photos on that, I was thinking, okay, probably maybe 50s.
Yeah.
Just from the profile photos and your photo on your website, and when you said 63, I'm thinking, oh hell, he's the same age as my dad.
Yeah. Granddad died when he was 63, and I thought he was an old man at the time.
Don't use that as a goal. Because it seems like you're just getting started with your career proper.
Yeah, that's the way it feels that way. Then sometimes wish I'd started writing earlier. I missed the 15 years between school and starting writing, but that was just all taken up with enjoying myself too much working in London.
Well, yeah, that was what, the 70s, 80s,
Late 70s and through the 80s. I was working in London. Yeah, so
right?
that was basically just a blur of going to movies, eating out in restaurants, and drinking far too much and working. That's about all. That's about all I remember from it.
Oh, and also, you were there for, like when Clive Barker started up.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
you said Ramsey Campbell. You know, you were there for all their beginnings. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine how that would have been. Like picking up the first Clive Barker story ever and kind of reading, and going,
Yeah,
either
I know the Books of Blood came out, and I got the paperbacks the day they came out, and started, it blew my mind because at the time nobody had done anything like that before. His style was completely different to anything I'd read before as well, and I
yeah,
became a fan overnight, basically. Then Ramsey Campbell, I've been reading, from about 74, 75. I think I picked up my first Ramsey Campbell stories, and I've been reading his short stories, and he's just a master. He's also a very nice guy. I know I've talked to Ramsey quite a few times. He's just generally a very nice guy and very helpful to any authors, and he's still going. He's mid-70s now, and he's still writing. So that's a role model for me to keep following.
it's amazing when when you start speaking to authors, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I know this guy, and he's a role model." You kind of go, "That doesn't make sense because you're my role model." You don't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so who would you say would be the top not British, but UK horror authors people should read?
Well, there's Ramsey and Clive Barker, British, of course. I used to be a big fan of James Herbert.
Right.
I went off him a bit because he didn't like the direction he took his own writing before he died. But the early stuff, his creature features, the rats ones,
Yeah.
were an inspiration at the time. He again, he's a guy who's thought of as a pulp writer, but he was also better than that. There's also a few of the guys in the smaller presses who are really brilliant and should have bigger recognition. There's a guy called Stephen Volk. Have you come across Stephen's name?
No.
Did you ever see a thing called Ghost Watch on the telly?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Stephen.
Oh, okay.
He's done a few films as well, ghost story films, and he did a TV series called Afterlife about a woman who is psychic.
Yeah.
So Stephen should be much better known because he writes short stories and novellas as well, which are brilliant. He's got a set of 3 short stories, novellas out at the moment. One's about Peter Cushing, one's about Dennis Wheatley, and one's about Arthur Crowley.
Oh,
wow. Put together, and the Peter Cushing one especially is brilliantly done. It's about Peter Cushing meeting a real monster.
Oh, cool.
It's really well done. But yeah, with Stevens been around for a while, done a lot of film work, but he should be better known as a writer. And of the rest, there's a guy called Gary McMahon, is a British horror writer, mainly in the smaller presses. He should be much better known because he's brilliant. He's had a lot of stories in the year's best.
Oh, okay.
But he's never quite broken out into the bigger, wider field. He should do because he's really good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. You've added to my TBR pile.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to an author, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, oh, come on. It's that case of, okay, do I sit down and try to get through the pile while trying to write? Because I
yeah, I'm the same thing. I've got a big pile as well.
That's the problem. There's with Amazon and all the indie presses, it is really hard to kind of keep track of
you can't
who.
Especially the horror genre is just too big now. You can't keep up. I'm missing an awful lot of people now. There's a lot of young writers I'd like to keep up with, but just at the time and all the money to get.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, like I read Operation Antarctica, then I just bought the rest of the squad books and I buy them every time they come out. And part of me's like, man, I should probably take a break from him and take a break from those and buy other authors' stuff that I keep getting told about. It's just like, nah, I'm enjoying it too much. Wow. I think this is definitely one of my favorite interviews I've done so far.
Good. keeping you happy anyway.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the way I talk about all this is like, this is for you to talk and say, and kind of impart your wisdom and knowledge and all that. And most of the authors I've had on so far, they're authors I'm a big fan of. Jake Bible, Lee Murray, yourself. There's, I'm just like, just sitting here. It's like,
it's like me when I first met James Herbert. I just sat and looked at him and went, I didn't know what to say to him.
Well, that's it. And the
I
more
also met Tom Baker, the Doctor Who. I met him in a bar in London once. He was standing next to me and I couldn't speak. I just talked to him. I wanted to say hello to him and shake his hand, but it was just too much on. And then the moment it was gone, missed it. Turned away. So, always regret not saying hello to him.
See, if my, the Fourth Doctor is my dad's favorite Doctor. If he heard you tell that story, he would slap you. Oh man. See, the man I've always wanted to meet would be Brian Blessed, and I know for a fact if I ever got to meet him, I wouldn't be able to say a thing. Just too in awe.
Yeah.
And I mean, your friends, some of these amazing authors that others like people like my age and probably older and a little younger kind of look up to, like, as being the gods of horror, basically. How does that make you feel, knowing that you talked to Ramsey Campbell, you talked to James, you met James Herbert, Guy Smith, all these guys that now are getting, everyone's just like, I love them, they're amazing,
Yeah.
How does that make you feel, knowing you sit there and go, yeah, I knew them.
Yeah, I knew them. Yeah, it's strange because I've known a few famous people in my life over the career, and they're just friends basically. It's hard to think of them as legends. Some of them, not just in the writing world, but in the sporting world. I knew people who became famous sports stars, and they're just mates basically. I don't think of them as like the cultural icon they've become. They're just a mate you had in the past, sort of thing.
Okay. And I suppose, like, if you're, for example, when you're talking to Guy Smith, when he was still alive, if he ever got like a little too big for his shoes, you'd probably cut him down to size quite easily.
Probably. It works both ways, of course, but yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. But I can't see you getting a big head.
Nah. Again, that's cultural upbringing. I think you're not allowed to where I come from. So.
Yeah, same thing in Australia. The moment you get a big head, everyone comes after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, Willie.
That's all right. I'll have to cut it short though, because I'm going to have to move. My bum's gone numb.
Yeah, no, I was keeping track of the time, and no, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. This was amazing.
I enjoyed myself as well. I just enjoy just talking to people anyway.
Look, I'm happy to reconnect anytime, just to have a chat. We don't need to record. I'm happy just to,
Drop me a line if you fancy it sometime.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so move around a little bit, get the bum not sleeping anymore. And I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
And once again, a very big thank you to William Meikle for coming on today. You can find links to Willie's work below in the description. And if you have any other author you'd like to see me interview, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Until next time, boils and ghouls, stay spooky.